Hi everyone, how you going? So I'm absolutely gobsmacked by an article I've just found in the Daily Mail. Andrew Laming has blaming people receiving Jobseeker payments for drug problems. Is blaming everything on our social security system in regards to a really bad accident that killed a couple on Australia Day. Now, I'm going to read the article. Oh, hang on, it looks like it didn't share. Okay, I'll read it to you and then I'll share it to the page in a minute. Okay, because I'm absolutely gobsmacked. So he's playing on the tragedy of this couple, right, from the accident where the young man caused an accident and the car hit them. And he's calling for drug testing and cashless debit cards, and he's blaming welfare payments for it happening because everybody's using their welfare payments for drugs. All right, so push for drug addicts to lose Centrelink benefits and be given welfare card instead of another ICE epidemic sweeps Australia, and how Jobseeker payments could be to blame. No, who's to blame here? The kid. He needs to take responsibility for what he did, right? No one asked him to go, if he did go and get drugs, no one asked him to get drugs, right? He committed a crime. That's part of the court system. Nothing to do with Social Security. It is not a criminal act to receive Social Security, and it shouldn't be criminalised, right? Which is, I am really gobsmacked here at the audacity of how low Andrew Laming would go. But then again, we've seen his stunts in the past, right? And yeah, he gets pretty low, doesn't he? So government is trialling cashless debit card that controls welfare recipients' cash. Andrew Laming MP wants young drug users to have their cash put on cards. He was the MP representing Kate Leadbetter and her boyfriend Matthew Field. The pair were killed by an alleged drug driver while walking their dogs in Brisbane. And we say condolences to their families, but it was a tragic accident, all right? But the thing, and that kid's got to live with that for the rest of his life as well. But this is a push to bring back the drug testing, which has already been shot down in Parliament 2 times, right? The costs are prohibitive. There is no rehabs in the regions they want to put it into. It plays into the stereotype that everybody is a drug addict, and we're not, right? So I'll go on and I'll read this. Young drug users who have seen their welfare payments soar during COVID-19 should have their Centrelink cash taken away to stop them falling into addiction and destroying the lives of innocent Australians, a federal MP is proposing. So he's assuming that, all those people that were able to pay their rents, buy food, get cars fixed, buy clothes for their kids, buy computers for their kids, do stuff, all of those people, right, apparently should have cash taken away because, they're only going to spend the money on drugs. They're only going to spend the money on drugs. I'm sick to death of Australian workers who can't work, don't have a job, constantly being, you're a drug addict, or your cash will make you a drug addict. Bullshit. Sorry, but I've had a gutful of this. And to use a tragedy of this family for his political gain to push the cashless debit card, how bloody low do you go? How low do you go, right? That accident is going to have ramifications for that family and the kid's family for the rest of their lives. Leave them to grieve and leave the courts to deal with the young man that caused the accident. Social Security is nothing to do with our court system and crime. Having a Social Security safety net is nothing to do with criminals or crime, right? There are 2 different things in our society. Muddying the waters and suggesting that because somebody receives a payment, they must be on drugs or they might buy drugs is absolutely stupid. When the majority of people are struggling to get by. In fact, next month, many people are going to be facing the realisation that they can't pay rent. They can't pay their mortgages, right? And we're going to see more homeless issues. People are going to be starving again. People are going to be going without medication again, right? Social Security is below the poverty line. people can't afford to buy drugs on Social Security anyway. All right? So, Andrew Lamming's electorate of Bowman in Brisbane's east was rocked by a drug tragedy on Australia Day. Remember this, when Kate Ledbetter and her boyfriend Matthew Field and their unborn child were allegedly killed by a 17-year-old intoxicated driver. Okay? It's really bad. But let me say this. In that case, if we're going to look at it this way, and as unfortunate as this, how many people have been killed by drunk drivers in the past? Cashless debit card doesn't stop people from getting drugs. It doesn't stop people from getting off. It doesn't help people get off drugs. It doesn't stop people buying alcohol, right? You know, it does, you know, yet, yeah, I don't see what's going on. This is just, he's politicising this, and this is not right. He's politicising this for his own ego. All right, and as far as I'm concerned, how dare he drag this family into the cashless debit card debate? How dare he? Nothing to do with it whatsoever. Liberal MP, the Liberal National MP is now pushing for reforms to the welfare system that could save lives by identifying young people who are using ice and weaning them off the drug before it's too late. You need rehabs for that, right? You need rehabs to be able to do that. You need to be able to get them early and get them into rehab. Yeah, I agree that there needs to be services, right? But there's not the services. You can't do this and expect people to reform by taking away their rights, their human rights, their protections under law, and putting them under the control of a of a private company, and say that's going to fix that person's addiction issue. No, it's not. And it can't, and it hasn't. Social Security plays a part to reduce crime by making sure that people have money so they don't steal things and so that they can try and find somewhere to live. Our Social Security system is now so low because it's been frozen since 1996 that it can't do its job. Okay? But if you want to bring in reforms, how about education? How about rehabs? Right? Instead of throwing these kids out on the streets with no supports, cashless debit cards are not going to stop people from taking drugs. In fact, in all card regions, ICE has exploded. Okay? Crime is up. People still drink alcohol, still the same problems, and still the same issues, but worse. Domestic violence is worse, everything, right? I am gobsmacked and speechless about this because I'm angry that he's politicised this family's tragedy for his own agenda. Because that's all he's doing. Oh, quick, jump on the bandwagon. We can use this to push the card. We can get more youth on the card. We can get more money in Hindu's pockets. Right? So, this is just ridiculous. I don't know what this, you know, I'm a loss for words. I really am. You know what I mean? Because he's blaming us having Social Security for this tragedy, which is not true. It is not the fault of us as a country having a social safety net for a tragedy happening like this. This is the fault of the perpetrator for not being responsible, right? That's the person responsible, and the courts will take that person to court, right? That's what we have a court system for, to hold people accountable for their actions. All right, Social Security is not the judge. Services Australia or Indu. You know? I'm just, yeah. So he goes on to say that between 2010 and 2019, there was a 28% increase in ice usage among people who use methamphetamines. Well, I thought methamphetamine was ice or speed anyway. I'm not sure because I don't do drugs. right? He wants that if they fail a hair follicle or urine test, then 80% of their allowance would be quarantined on a cashless card to stop them spending taxpayer money on drugs. It hasn't worked anywhere across the country. Basics card didn't work. Cashless debit card has not stopped people getting drugs who are addicts, right? You know, I've got a visitor here who's asking me a question. Where did he get the percentage on drugs that are living below the poverty line? So where did Andrew get the percentage of people using drugs, right? From? Where's the data from? Let's call him out on that. Living below the poverty line, you haven't got money to spend on drugs. His proposal comes after the coronavirus supplement for those on welfare boosted incomes by up to $550 a fortnight, handing each recipient an extra $7,900 between April 2020 and March this year. All right? Not everybody got that much. Anyway, so there's more money in the system. There's more liquidity available to people who are addicted. Dr. Lamming told Daily Mail. It's amazing. He loves to use his doctor title when it suits him. But he's no longer a GP and he's no longer an eye doctor. So he picks and chooses when he uses his doctor, even though he's not a doctor anymore. All right? It's likely that most addicts have started using before they reach the age of receiving independent Centrelink payments. Then that's when you need to get to them, mate. That's when you need to get the education going in schools. You need to get the education and the support services, right, there, ready if you can identify that person before they get into the system. Don't blame the person for receiving their legal entitlements under law. All he's saying there is that they got into it before they even got Centrelink payments, which contradicts what he's blaming Centrelink payments for. You know? Ugh. He says here, but there are people that entered the cycle at 16 and potentially they could be using Commonwealth funding for their habit. No, they just go out and rob cars, people, houses, steal whatever they can flog to their dealer to get their drugs, mate. Right? There's a question I've just been asked. Was the kid even on Centrelink payments? Not every youth is a drug addict on Centrelink payments. There's plenty of people out there that work full-time that are drug addicts. But we're not talking about those people, are we? You know what I mean? So he's building a stereotype about our youth. Addicts often couch surf with others in similar situation and pool resources so they can afford to fund their habit. So because we've got so many youth that can't afford rent by themselves and they're share housing, he's now saying that they're doing that to fund their habits. No. Our youth has to share house to have a roof over their heads because payments are so low that they can't get a rental. They can't get on a lease. Youth allowance base rate is $309 a fortnight, dependent rate. However, we've got thousands of kids out there on the streets, right, trying to pay rents in share accommodation, trying to study and trying to find a job in the cities, right, stuck on these dependent rates, even though the government knows that they can't go home. Even in one case where the government made damn sure they can't go home because they moved the parent from a 2-bedroom place to a 1-bedroom place and then stipulated on the lease that the parent cannot have anybody reside with them, right? But meanwhile, they left the child on the dependent rate, not in a position to sign a lease, not in a position to rent somewhere safely, leaving them in the position of couch surfing and having to take whatever they could get, right? The system is broken and it's breaking our kids, right? But to turn around and say, Social Security is the problem. No. All right? So now, we've heard the Liberals before go on about people who share house. How dare they pay towards rent in a house and chip in? Well, most rooms are $150 to $250 a week for a room, for one room. I can remember when house rentals were that much. People don't have a choice but to share. We've got a homelessness crisis happening right now. There's another article on the SN on 7 News Wide Bay. All right, another article about the homeless tent city in Hervey Bay. People who just can't get housing. And they're not drug addicts. They're just people who can't get housing. Payments are too low, right? House rentals have gone up and the amount of availability has gone down. Simple. And, of course, cashless debit cards, Indu and all their rent stuff-ups, as soon as they can get a tenant out and get back to normal and be able to pay their mortgage properly, they don't take people on the Indu card anymore, causing more barriers to getting homeless. So, because I'm thinking of a lot of things here that I've read over the period of time. Remember, Minderoo Gen 1, their next agenda is to put all youth allowance on the cashless debit card. That's what they want in their submission. Twiggy Forest Gen 1 and Minderoo, they put forward in their submission, this is what they would like to see happening. 250,000 of our kids on the card next, right? Then how do they rent rooms? They don't. Where do they live? They don't. This is ridiculous. Right? We've got good families can't get housing, and this idiot's going on about politicising a tragedy to push an agenda. That's the bottom line here. He's pushing an agenda, politicising a tragedy. It's disgusting. He says, however, the doubling of the ice street price due to COVID-19 may have stopped users from buying more drugs than normal with their extra cash. He's assuming that all of our kids are druggies. I'm furious. My kid's not a druggie. She's just gone through all of this, right? And she's going to be struggling when the payments go down. She's looking for jobs and she's got job interviews lined up. And she's doing a course, There has been additional coronavirus supplement paid, but it's also substances needed to manufacture ice can't be imported at the moment, so the prices have gone through the roof. What has that got to do with Social Security when the people that import this shit to make this shit are nothing to do with Social Security? The drug dealers are not on Social Security. You'll find they're some community-minded businessman, or they work in a good job and they've got a good cover, right? You know what I mean? And I'd hate to say more, but I can't, because I learned a lot driving taxis, and I can tell you right now, your big drug kingpins and stuff like that are not the people you think they are, right? And also, Andrew Laming, how does he know that the price of the drugs has doubled? I wouldn't know. My kid wouldn't know. You know what I mean? And Barbara just said the same thing. How the hell does he know the price of these drugs? I don't know. You don't know. Barbara doesn't know. Right? Ugh. So, it's impossible to say if they've bought more drugs, but I'm just noting that there's more money in the system. For God's sakes, mate, it's been cut. And it goes down again next month to the piddly little $40 a day. Right? The money that was spent through the system saved our economy. Or didn't you want that? Right? People paid for car regos, people paid for food. I had a lady sitting here who had got to eat fresh fruit and vegetables and meat for the first time in 2 years. Right? Parents bought clothes and shoes, new stuff. Right? This is disgusting. Cars got fixed. People were able to buy washing machines. People were able to buy furniture. People were able to do so much. And And it's sad, isn't it? Because that supplemental raise was only what the Social Security Jobseeker payment, New Start, whatever you want to call it, should have been if it had not been frozen by John Howard in 1996. So it really wasn't a bonus. It was like, here, this is what your rate's supposed to be. We'll tease you for a little while because we can't have the middle class that are now in those unemployment lines outside Centrelink's finding out how we've been treating you for the last 26 years. That's what the fact of the matter was. They've strung this out to cut it down gradually so that those that lost jobs for the first time and entering the Centrelink system for the first time didn't get the full smack of bang, right? Because if that had happened and the house losses, the debt losses, oh my God, it would have been absolutely, crippled our economy. Most of that money went back into your shops. It kept shops open. It kept people employed. And Jobkeeper was being rorted anyway. But that's different, isn't it? But that's welfare for the people with jobs. So that's okay, right? But it did help some businesses be able to keep their staff. But we've seen other businesses give the money and the bonuses to their CEOs and make huge profits. That's been rorted. But now let's all pick on somebody who's trying to live on $309 a fortnight or $455 a fortnight, right, who's under 25. Let's just brand them all drug addicts and pick on them all, right? You know, this is ridiculous. The banking stats article showed where all of the supplement money went. Furniture, fridges, freezers, food, car regos, all sorts. It was all laid out before. You know what I mean? The MP explained that detecting drug use early was crucial to stamping out the scourge of the addiction. Yeah, I'd agree with him on that. Except for one thing. Who's paying for all of this? The taxpayer. Because you can't honestly expect a person on Jobseeker to cough up the $700 to $900 per test to have this done against their will anyway, because these aren't going to be consensual tests. It'll be, you will have this or we'll cut your payment off, right? Okay? So, for hardened drug addicts, you've already missed the boat. These interventions are about identifying as early as possible a user potentially in their first weeks of experimenting with a drug like ice. So, basically, if kids smoke a pot, right, they end up contracted to Indu, and that's it, all over Red Rover. They've lost their consumer rights, their legal rights under law, their protections under Social Security Act, their autonomy, right? They're segregated from the community for the crime of smoking pot, right? Because that sticks to hair, right? Yet somebody on one of the other drugs, my understanding is they can actually get that out of the system within 24 hours and pass a drug test. So who's going to be affected here? People who basically, I don't know. This is ridiculous. You want to stop drugs, you need to educate people properly. You know what I mean? And you need to do it in high school. And show them the gory details. Don't be shy. Let's not be pussies here and, we can't show them what happens. Can't show them what happens to their livers and their brains and stuff like that with certain drugs. Do you know what I mean? If you want to educate kids, do it. Do it before they come out of school. You know? I don't know what to say. I can't even get through the whole article. I'll post the article. I thought I had, but it didn't share properly. And you guys can read it. To me, he wants hair bulb and urine tests. Right? I don't know. Does that feel like a real invasion to you guys? Where does consent come into this? You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm still gobsmacked by politicising a tragedy for his agenda. It is disgusting. We're not stupid. There are drug issues in our communities. But you've cut all the funding to all the services. Homeless shelters, domestic violence supports, drug rehabs, health sector. You cut all the bloody services away and then complain. You won't put the money into the services, will you? You want to put the money into Indu's pocket, knowing it won't fix anything. Anyway, I'm going to go. Hair tests will allow them to fully test a person's history right back through their whole length of hair. Wow. Well, it takes me 3 years to grow long hair, so they would be able to go right back through 3 years worth of my health history with a hair sample if I had long hair. It's just crazy. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'll post the rest of this. What he's calling for is not the solution. It's not the solution, right? They never want to deal with the cause. They only ever want to deal with the symptom. And it's about time they invest money in the cause so that we don't end up with the symptoms. So, one last comment here. It sounds like something Anne Ruston might follow up. I bet she will. Well, considering she made a comment in regards to a national rollout at the Senate estimates and the Senate inquiries, she turned around and said, we'll let the public decide. So are they going to manipulate this story of this couple's tragedy to build up anger in the public? Right, so that every kid is on a cashless debit card just for looking the wrong way, living in the wrong postcode, right? For God's sakes, with cannabis, if you walk past somebody who's smoking it and the smoke gets in your hair, you fail a drug test and you haven't touched it because it sticks to your clothes, it sticks to your hair like nicotine does with cigarettes. You know what I mean? So you're going to have a lot of false positives, a lot of people that are going to be trapped onto cards and more dollars for stakeholders that are connected to to Indu. You know what I mean? This is ridiculous. Anyway, I'll leave it here. See ya.